we're moving on to 2 steps. So that means you're going to need 2 sets of conversions and 1 starting point. If you are very, very familiar with the metrics chart, you may be able to use the exponents to get the conversion. And that's fine in the future. But if you will just try to practice the method where you're putting the steps in the way I'm showing, just for a few of the problems, it will help you nail down the method. Because we're kind of teaching 2 things at once. All right, so again, we have these same conversions we've already written out. We're just going between them. In this case, notice I'm going from something with a prefix to something else. And when you look at the chart, I can take a gigagram to a gram, but there's nowhere where I can just take it right to some other kind of a unit. So that's how you know that you need 2 steps. It's that when you look at either a chart or your list of, other kinds of conversions, if you don't have a direct conversion, that means you're going to need more steps. But it's okay. It's not like a tricky thing. It just means you're doing a little more matching. So I'm trying to solve for a decigram, and I'm starting with the only thing that has a number, which is this gigagram. And again, you will see some problems soon where there are other numbers in there. There's always going to be a situation for quite some time where there's only one number with a single unit. Maybe you'd have another number like that, but it's got this little grouped set of 2 units. You always start with the number that only has 1 unit. And of course, this only has 1 number, so you don't have to worry about it here. So again, we're just diagonally putting our G down there. And when we look at our chart, we know that we can go from that to a gram. And if you like to write them down with the problem off to the side, that's perfectly fine. And then now I don't want to end it with a gram. I want to end it with a decigram. So I'm going to go from grams to decigrams. And again, with my units, it's like saying a gigagram times a gram times a decigram divided by a gigagram and a gram. So you can see that cancels, and you're left with a decigram, which is what it was asking about. And then we are going to do the next one, then I'll put the numbers in. Just make sure those units are in the right place. And again, like I said, that's the diagonal. And then over here, here's another diagonal. And then we're going to say that we're looking for the milliliter. We're starting with the only thing that has a number. And again, I can't go from a picoliter to a milliliter on this chart. I can go from a picoliter to a liter. That's what we have right here. So I'm going to go to a liter. And then again, I don't want the liter. I'm supposed to be getting it into milliliters. So liters to milliliters. You'll notice on my units, my picos are diagonal and my liters are diagonal. Now I'm going to show you again. Picoliter times a milliliter over a picoliter and a liter. So you notice these cancel and those cancel. So I'm left with a milliliter. So eventually you'll get good at, just crossing them out like that. Let me put the numbers in. So again, the prefix right there, that's 1, and that's 1 times 10 to the 9th. And then over here, I've got 1 times 10 to the minus 1 and 1, because I'm using this one here. Again, the prefix is 1. And then on this lower one, I'm using, that's the 1, and that's 1 times 10 to the minus 12. And then down here, liters to milliliters, 1 and 1 times 10 to the minus 3. Now just to make sure you're getting in your calculator all right. So 5.1, let me clear the rest. 5.1 times 1, and then here's my exponent key, and 9. And I like to go across the top. I like to be really consistent with these because inevitably I'll miss one. So I'm going straight across the top. You don't have to put the 1 in, times 1 if you don't want to. And again, you don't have to put divided by 1. And then I'm going to use my divided by sign again and use 1E. And I'm using my negative key and then 1. Oops. clear. Oh, I'm going to start over then. 5.1 times 1 e to the 9th times 1 divided by 1 divided by 1 e to the negative key 1. And that gives me a syntax error because I put this in weird. There we go, 5.1. So this gives me 5.1 times 10 to the 10th. Now, if you didn't like using those two divided by signs, you could have also put it in like this, where you put a parentheses, and then a 1, and then a times 1 e to the minus 1. But you have to use a parentheses, and you have to remember to use a parentheses. And I just think it's a lot easier just to go right through and say times, and then this is the divided by, and that's the divided by. And you'll get the answer right every time that way. But you'll notice that is the same answer. It's just more keys. All right, next one, 3.3 times 1 e to the negative 12 times 1, you don't have to put the 1 in, divided by 1, you don't have to put that 1 in, divided by 1 e to the negative 3. And that gives you 3.3 times 10 to the minus 9th. Sig fig wise, remember this is exact because they're all metric conversions. Exact and exact. So the only thing that matters for sig figs is 1, 2 sig figs, 1, 2 sig figs, and 1, 2, 1, 2.